I played through Pokemon Shield twice for this video, and just as an example of what this game means to me, I had absolutely no problem deleting my full save data after my first playthrough. To be completely transparent up front, I had fun with the game, but did I have $60 worth of fun? That's something I really don't like to think about when I play a Pokemon game. I played through Pokemon Shield without even really expecting to do an extensive video on it. By the end of my playthrough, I was just like, wow, that meant nothing to me. You start off with this honestly kind of cool opening cinematic where you see this guy come out into this big stadium filled with people raving about the next Pokemon challenge. This guy pretends he's the professor of the game. He's not. But he says all the opening stuff that you would expect from a Pokemon game. But still, something about him, even from the first time I played it, just exuded this is the evil villain guy. But we'll get to that. Seeing all these fans just chanting and cheering about the next Pokemon tournament, it really brings flashbacks of the Pokemon anime when you would see, Ash and all of his pals in a big tournament, getting ready to show off their stuff in front of thousands and thousands of people. Unfortunately, I feel like the game never really reaches that height of excitement. Even though the set dressing is there, it doesn't really feel like the world makes sense. And the tournament battles themselves feel so small scale. Like, why is this taking place in a stadium? I remember actually thinking while I was playing my first playthrough that, wow, if I was in the audience, I would have no idea what was happening on the field. Obviously, there's a new feature with Dynamaxing where Pokemon can get way, way bigger, but that's like such a one-time and predictable thing that it really doesn't feel exciting at all. I mean, I know this is probably all CG and not running in-engine, but I think back to the first footage we saw of Pokemon Battle Revolution and just the amazing scale that game was on. I mean, again, this was all probably pre-rendered, but I feel like we should be at that level where we see a Pikachu actually running up to a Deoxys and headbutting it, or a Hyper Beam shooting straight through an enemy and into the stands. Can you imagine how amazing that would be, especially with these Gigantamax Pokemon? The level of detail in these animations are stunning too, pre-rendered or not.
A fierce blow! Kyogre barely holds on!
And this was 14 years ago. I think we have the technology to do it now. And this is just a minor pet peeve of mine, but I hate the fact that we can never see Pokemon in their actual sizes. Especially since Gigantamax is a thing now, I would really like to see a Wailord being an actual freaking Wailord. Ooh, seeing this image makes me actually mad. I'll talk more about Dynamaxing later, but just the excitement is not there. I don't really feel like I'm a trainer rising up and becoming this great battler in front of thousands and thousands of people, gaining millions and millions of fans. I almost feel like there should have been some kind of mechanic involved in, filling stadiums, getting people to recognize you. Maybe they could have done something interesting where if you use a fan favorite Pokemon or you use a fan favorite move, that you get more fans on your side. And then more and more people start flocking to see your battles. It really is kind of depressing when you feel more excitement from FIFA or NBA 2K than you do in this game. As it stands, it really feels sort of jarring. Yeah, your first battle is in a small little backyard arena type thing, but by the time you get to the first town, you're already in this gigantic fucking totally packed stadium where everyone's so happy to see you. It really doesn't feel like any of it is earned. So anyway, the champion Leon comes out with his Charizard, because remember, Charizard made it into the game, but Blastoise didn't. Now, generally, I like the designs of this game. I think Raihan looks pretty fucking cool. I think Nessa has a nice tight body. Oh my god. But fucking Leon, I could never get over his stupid looking beard, his dumbass blue hair, the goddamn cape, which he never takes off. Even when he's walking around in public, he walks around with that stupid fucking cape. And it's like, Jesus Christ, dude, sports stars don't wear their logo-ridden jerseys all over the place. I just can't help but shake the fact that this guy is so fucking full of himself, but also a super nice guy, like Alan from The Amazing World of Gumball. He's just so damn happy and ugly, and he's the unbeatable champion who everyone comes to see. Like, I feel like in a world so dominated by sports, would it not be boring if one team or one person won over and over again forever? If one team was just so unstoppable that everyone just basically expected them to always win, and some other team, an underdog, probably from Canada, comes out of nowhere and defeats the overpowered team, I feel like that would be really exciting to see. So right off the bat, they show you this huge Gigantamax Charizard, although they call it Dynamax for whatever reason. This is a Gigantamax because it changes form. The game doesn't really explain that to you, by the way. It has like one signpost somewhere that I have to sort through all this footage to find. Gigantamax Charizard looks pretty cool. It reminds me of like Greymon or War Greymon from Digimon, and I really like that. But is Gigantamax worth losing Mega Evolutions and Z moves? I just think Mega Evolutions are way cooler. And yeah, not every Pokemon has one, but you know, at least you're guaranteed a cool looking new transformation. And the stat changes involved are more easy to understand than with Dynamax. And Z moves look and feel just as devastating as Dynamax moves, especially when you realize the Pokemon specific Gigantamax moves don't really have specific animations for the Pokemon. Usually it's just a slightly different particle effect. Meanwhile, in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, you get actual new fleshed out animations for the Pokemon specific moves. And sure, some of them were overpowered, but that was kind of the whole point. I mean, but some of them were really overpowered, though. With Dynamax, I can make my goddamn Dratini bigger. Oh, if Dratini's even in the game. Yep, no, Dratini's not in the game. But, like, if I were to make my Caterpie gigantic, it would just be a really big Caterpie. And sure, the first few times you do it, it feels like cool-ish. The special effects and stuff look really interesting, but after you've done it 10 times, 20 times throughout the game, it just really loses its value and its coolness factor. It's so built into the mechanics of the game too, where you could just have these gigantic Pokemon roaming the world and have them be a core part of the story, but nope, they really aren't. As far as the overworld goes, fighting Dynamax Pokemon is relegated to finding these little tiny holes in the ground, and then you're like teleported to a special place where you fight the Pokemon. It takes you to like a den, which is somehow out in the open, but also underground, I guess. And that's the only place you see the gigantic Pokemon unless you go to a stadium. And the storyline itself, while it's about the gigantic Pokemon, it never really pits you against them. You hear about, oh my gosh, this fucking huge-ass Pokemon just appeared, and what are we gonna do? And then when you go over there, it's like, oh no, don't worry about it. The champion took care of it. Literally, this asshole Leon takes out a Dynamax Pokemon off-screen, and someone hands you a news article. It would have been really cool if you could see before your eyes a Pokemon just turning gigantic and you having to either fight it or run away. Pokemon Let's Go and Sun and Moon did this whole Pokemon boss battle type thing. They have the Dynamax mechanics set up to be that sort of Pokemon boss battle thing, but then the storyline doesn't do anything with that. And then of course you can always catch a Pokemon that doesn't have the cool Gigantamax form, even though it is a Pokemon species that would have its own form. You can't just raise a Gigantamax Pokemon or give them the Gigantamax factor somehow. You have to specifically catch a Gigantamax Pokemon in order for it to have the cool special form. That's like if I had an Ampharos and I gave it an Ampharosite, but it wouldn't Mega Evolve because it wasn't a special Ampharos that I captured in a special place. I just don't know why they would set it up like that, especially since they seem to want people to care more about each Pokemon that they catch and not just replace them with stronger, better Pokemon as they go along. But then you make a system which specifically incentivizes me to get rid of an old Pokemon because it doesn't have the cool transformation. I realized more than any other time playing the Pokemon games that the Pokemon themselves are sort of incidental to this world, unlike the boss monsters from Final Fantasy or Mass Effect, where it feels like you're actually stumbling into the lair or the home of a beast. There are very few story beats in the Pokemon games that actually revolve around the Pokemon. Usually it's relegated to legendaries or little lore bits here and there like you might see in the Pokedex. But in the story, with a large majority of the Pokemon, you don't really get to see that lore play out. And in the greater world itself, now that we can see the Pokemon in the overworld, you don't really get to see them exploring their habitats or anything unique or special. You look at the way they amble around the map and they don't really feel like they have any detailed animations. You got Pokemon spinning in place, Pokemon with no animations for turning or looking around. You start to see little glimpses of Pokemon that feel like they belong in the world when you see the Mantines leaping over the water, but then you see one clip into a rock a couple of times and it's like, oh yeah. They're not really interacting with their environment or in their world in a really complex way. And you know it's possible because you see some Pokemon have some basic level of interaction with their environment, like how the Pokemon Phalanx moves in and out of its burrows, or how Morgrem hides among these glowing mushrooms. If they just took 70 or 80 Pokemon per game, really focused on just those ones and cut all the other ones out, I think that would be an okay experience. You know, they could polish up those animations. They could make each Pokemon feel like a living, breathing part of that world and give each Pokemon a story in that world. I would compare this to something like Red Dead Redemption 2 or Monster Hunter or fucking Breath of the Wild, another Nintendo property. When you see a monster or an animal in these games, it feels like they belong in that world. It feels like there's a reason each animal or each creature is in the space that it's in. These creatures belong in their world. You can see them grazing, you can see them hunting or attacking other animals. You can see them interacting with their environment more than just, you know, swimming on a flat plane or walking around a patch of grass. But you don't get that with Pokemon. Pokemon is so two-dimensional. And the fact that they've added this new open world where you can actually see the Pokemon in 3D just adds to the fact that the Pokemon really feel this time around like they don't belong. Pokemon's always been this weird series with me where they'll have a really good idea in one game and completely take it out of another game. Alpha Sapphire, Omega Ruby, when you can fly around the entire world and actually see the world beneath you as you're flying and land anywhere, like that's a really cool way you get to experience the game world. And only Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby fucking remakes, only they actually had that experience in them, is the kind of thing that makes you really feel like you're on an adventure and that the Pokemon you're riding on actually matters. And it's really weird thinking about how they completely took out Ride Pokemon. Like, I thought Ride Pokemon was going to be a staple because it fits so well with the game. I mean, it was even in Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu, but in this game they take it out. Even the fucking easiest one they could have implemented, the Corviknight Taxi, they didn't even really have in the game. So in every single other fucking Pokemon game, when you fly on a Pokemon, you get a little animation showing you going into the air. They took it out of this game. All you get is a goddamn loading screen, and this loading screen still finds a way to piss me off. There's a tiny little artifact at the corner of the screen every time you use fly, and it's so fucking annoying. They couldn't even fucking get that stupid little fucking artifact out of that goddamn image. All they needed to do was have an animation for the Corviknight lifting you up and the Corviknight dropping you. But no, they couldn't even fucking do that. It's just a goddamn loading screen, and that's so annoying. I'm such a sucker for the tiny little details of my character interacting with the world. But in this game, the most interaction you really get is with the campfire shit, and that gets old super fast. When you finally do get to the wild area, like I said, the animations are really bad and the AI sort of sucks because the Pokemon will just spin around in place. It sucks when I would almost prefer to go back to the days of just running through the grass and catching Pokemon that way. And as far as we're talking about the wild area, let's really talk about the wild area. It's so fucking boring. You have this big, expansive area, which is actually pretty small when you think about it, but it feels big just because the walking speed is so slow. But it's supposed to be the area that makes you feel like, wow, I'm on a huge adventure. I'm really going out into the Pokemon wilderness and exploring. You never see any Pokemon camps in the wild area. I've already spoken about how the Pokemon don't feel like they belong there. The walking speed is so fucking slow and there's no sprint button. It's not awe-inspiring at all. It doesn't feel like this big, beautiful, amazing world. There's just a few structures plopped down here and there. You play a game like Breath of the Wild or Death Stranding or Red Dead Redemption 2 and there are beautiful structures everywhere. There are little details. Those games all inspire awe with their open worlds. And meanwhile, this game, it's just a flat, shallow, boring trudge from one wild Pokemon den to the other wild Pokemon den. Nothing at all related to the story happens in the wild area. It's literally just a vehicle for you to get from one place to another, yet the game expects you to spend so much time in the wild area. The sheer level of RNG manipulation necessary to find the Pokemon that you want to find in this wild area would put IV and EV training to shame. And if you're playing the game as intended, you're expected to check back every day, go to each wild area spot where you see a light beam coming up, fight the Pokemon in there to reset the wild area dens, and rinse and repeat. And on higher levels, fighting the Pokemon in the dens to re-roll is just utterly impossible sometimes, because the AI companions are so fucking stupid. They will use the shittiest move of all time when literally all they have to do is attack. And of course, if you're spending so much time in such an area, you want to get around it as fast as possible. So what do? You ride your bike. Why would you walk around in Red Dead Redemption 2 when you can ride your horse? Well, imagine getting on your horse and suddenly you're wearing a completely different outfit that you never wanted and never chose. I'm sorry, you do get to choose the outfit, but they all look just as stupid. So you get a Rotom bike which can ride on water as you progress through the story, but at first it only rides on land. So that means you're shit out of capturing all these water Pokemon that you see until you get the water bike way later in the story. But never mind that fact. When you're riding on this bike, not only is it also the slowest bike in existence, your boost to speed the bike up is timed for some reason, and as I said, it hides your clothing that costs a lot of money in these games. Not real world money, thank fucking Christ, but you do have to pay lots and lots of Poké Dollars to customize your character in this game, and half of the time when you're walking through the wild area, you don't even get to see it. You start off the game by choosing your character from this photo lineup. Because this game takes place in the United Kingdom, I wanted to make this blonde Irish girl named Evie who overpowers everything with an Eevee. I know this is really strong three-dimensional role-playing here, try to keep up. Now, unlike other better modern games, you cannot create your character from the start. You just choose a photo and all the character creation and customization stuff comes after. So for the first hour of the game, I'm stuck with this fucking dumbass hairstyle until I can get to the first barbershop later in the game. Mercifully, there's a clothing store in the starting town, but even that takes a little while to get to, so I can't get rid of these threads until I get there. As far as customization goes, there's, the usual amount. They've added more layers to clothing so you can put more on and mix and match a little more, which is nice. I ended up with a character I really liked, especially toward the end of the game. One dumb thing about changing clothing is that you can only do it in the clothing stores. I don't know why this is a thing. In Pokemon X and Y, you could change clothes in the Pokemon Center as well. And then in Sun and Moon, and now this game, they made it so that you can only change clothes in the clothing store. So if you go to a town that doesn't have a clothing store, you either have to fly back or just live with what you have at the time. You can't even save outfits, at least not that I could find. The real issue with clothing customization in this game is that it doesn't matter because you can't see it when it would matter, i.e. when you're on your gym challenge. All the gym leaders have these cool, unique clothes that they wear when they battle people, and when you battle them, you're forced to wear this stupid, uncustomizable challenger outfit, and you can't even change the color of it. Weirdly, the game gives you the option of buying different outfits, but when you're actually doing your gym challenge, it always just goes to the default clothing that you don't get to choose. How come when I become the champion, I can't make my own champion outfit? Maybe you could add little logos to it and stuff as you get more endorsements with that fan system that I was talking about earlier. As you gain more and more fans, more people want to endorse you, and you get special logos and maybe special perks or some shit that you can use in battle or outside of battle. I mean, you have this whole aesthetic of a big, sports challenge, and you don't do anything sportsy with it. Here's the rub, too. In Pokemon Sun and Moon, on a fairly basic level, but it was still there, you could customize the way you threw your Pokeball. And then, in this game, in a game where I feel like it matters way more than ever, they take it out. What if you could change the way that you throw a ball in a normal battle? You could change the way that you throw a ball in a double battle. You could change the way that you interact with your Pokemon or cheer them on, your little battle animations here and there. You could change the text that you have for your Pokemon, just like in Pokemon Battle Revolution. Different catchphrases, different special poses. I mean, literally everyone obsesses over Leon's special battle pose that he does every time he goes out into the arena. And you can't even make your own special battle pose. What if this gigantic Pokeball was just too big for me to carry and I just wanted to roll it out onto the field? What if I wanted to be a super macho badass and throw it out with one hand? Absolutely none of that in this game that is supposed to be about creating your own trainer and going on your own adventure. How did they drop the ball so entirely on customization where half of the time you feel like your customization doesn't matter because you don't even get to see the clothes that you bought? And then the other half of the time you feel like you just don't get enough customization options to really make your trainer feel special or important. So the game transitions to your small town home where your character is masturbating on the couch. Watching sports And oh my god, am I so sick of rivals just walking in on you. This is so annoying. Now, this game could have had a much cooler starting area, and I usually don't even think about this in Pokemon, but here we are. But I'm kind of sick of the small town beginnings of Pokemon, you know? You begin in a small farm town, and you move to the next bigger town, and then the next big city right after that. Could we come from humbler beginnings? I mean, Pokemon introduced Team Skull, which came from this old slums that the government had just completely given up on. Little things like that are really interesting, and I'm wondering why we keep having to go to the small town beginnings like Pallet Town. There are much more interesting beginning locations in this game by itself, and much more interesting backstories, but they give us the most boring, mundane, played out one. And then the most fucking annoying rival since How. There are plenty of good characters in Pokemon Sun and Moon, and there are plenty of good characters in this game. Why do they give us the most happy-go-lucky, fucking annoying rival of all time over and over again? Hop is Leon's younger brother, which explains the personality issues I have with him. But he's also just so one-dimensional. He's just like, yeah, I'm going to be the best and beat my older brother. And oh no, I lost to you. And now I'm kind of sad for a little bit. But I'm going to still be the best and beat my older brother. I don't feel any sort of motivation from this guy, except for the fact that he just keeps shouting in my ear. Hey, Evie, is that your flash new phone? Were you watching Lee's exposition match on it? But you can't cheer him on with your hands full. Fuck off, dude. I don't want to cheer for your goddamn brother. I think it really would have been a lot cooler if the game started off in a place like Marnie's hometown. I think it would have been so cool if you started off your adventure in this city doing street battles until you gain enough clout in order to actually be able to participate in the gym challenge. Rather than just the older brother of your next door neighbor, both of whom you hate with a burning passion, coming out of nowhere and just endorsing you for the gym challenge after you've beaten his brother twice. It mainly just feels like everyone guilt-tripped him into it because he didn't want to do it in the first place. What if you have your first gym challenge with your rival and it's just one or two people watching? Maybe you go to a bit of Pokemon school, learn a bit more through that, and by the time you're ready to prove your worth for the gym challenge, there's about 20 or 30 people in the background watching and cheering you on. I mean, one cool thing you get to see from this very first battle is that NPCs can just be in the background and react to what's actually happening. I mean, in Leon's case, he just sort of stands there with his hands on his hips like a bitch. But it would have been really cool if you could see more and more NPCs start to stand around you and cheer you on as you appeal more to your fans. And maybe that fan appeal system, like I mentioned before, isn't a totally necessary mechanic, but if you do certain fan favorite moves or use certain fan favorite Pokemon, you get boosts in the battle that help for a much tougher gym battle. I just think the small town farm boy setting doesn't really fit with this big stadium sports theme that they're going with. It makes a lot more sense to be a kid from the inner city trying to make it big in a world where everyone's just not really paying that much attention to you. And slowly but surely you start to gain more recognition and clout as you get better and better at the game. So Leon is showing up in town to visit Hop and his mother, and Hop decides that you need to come with him. What if I don't want to meet your brother, Hop? What if I just don't fucking care? Now, I sadly tried to sit back on the couch after I got up off the couch and learned that you cannot sit back on the couch. You also can't sleep in your bed this game, which is something that you could do in Sun and Moon. You could sleep on like a lot of people's beds in that game. You can just go on someone's hot, sweaty, semen-infested bed and just smell their sheets and shit. It was a little weird, but I like the attention to detail. Look at you, Hop. I reckon you've grown exactly 1.25 inches since the last time I saw you. An inch? Why would they use inches? This is the United Kingdom. The fuck? Bingo, that's the sort of sharp eye that's kept you undefeated so long, eh, Lee? No, it's been my Charizard, Hop. It's been my Charizard that's kept me undefeated. Anyway, look at my cape and all my endorsements. Buy from Nike and Amazon. Don't do drugs, kids. You don't want to be punished by God. So Leon brings you back home, and you get to choose your first Pokemon. Something I've really wanted for a long time has been branching evolutions for the starter Pokemon. Like, you choose your starter, and you're supposed to just love it no matter what it transforms into, but sometimes it really doesn't do what you want it to do. So I thought it would be cool if there were like 2 or 3 different branches of evolutions you can go with the starter Pokemon. Something along the line of Digimon World, where depending on how you raise the Pokemon, it evolves into a different thing. and then it has a different final evolution as a result. That way, if you're like careful to raise it a certain way, you can really get the Pokemon you want. And there's so many cool things you could do with these designs. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. We've seen with different form changes, Mega Evolutions, and now Gigantamax that Pokemon having different designs is a really cool and unique thing that we could play around with. And then that just adds more opportunities for people to start off at the same path but end up somewhere completely differently from everyone else. So anyway, for my first playthrough I went with the grass type because I didn't like the other two final evolutions, but man did that feel underwhelming. Finding out that these Pokemon didn't even have their own Gigantamax forms was really frustrating. Oh, but don't worry about that. That gets fixed in the expansion pass. Yep, in the expansion pass they add the new Gigantamax forms of the starter Pokemon. But the Gigantamax forms look actually really cool from the expansion packs, so I'm really upset that they weren't in the base game, because that probably could have increased the experience of using it quite a bit. Anyway, in this data, I was just going to use the water type enough until I got my Eevee. Now, the character design is probably the best thing about Pokemon Shield. Marnie is a personal favorite of mine. She just has this dark gothic look about her, but she's also pretty sweet on the inside. I also really like Bede, or Bede, however you pronounce his name. Marnie comes from this like inner city area where everything's a little bit run down, a little bit poor, a little bit less lavish than the rest of the world. It reminds me of Po Town from Pokemon Sun and Moon, but with a bit less of the stench of government neglect. You just get the sense that this city is a city that's never quite caught up with the times. It's never quite gotten as much attention as all the other cities. Although it really doesn't make sense that this city is a major destination in the gym challenge, and yet it doesn't have the funds or the money to even afford a stadium. How does it make sense that Milo's little farm village thing has a better stadium than Marnie's city? Isn't that like the whole draw of this whole thing? Like, oh man, we get to see these gigantic Pokemon and these up-and-coming trainers come and battle with these amazing gym leaders, and yet we don't have the money to give this town a stadium? That's why I think it would make so much more sense if you actually started off in this town, maybe with Marnie as your rival from the beginning. She always feels like so much more of a meaningful rival than Hop does. Marnie's backstory feels really personal. Her older brother is a gym leader, but he feels a bit despondent because no one even comes to challenge him. Marnie's fans team yell. They aren't bad guys, but they're so overzealous to make sure she becomes big in the world that they'll do anything, even resort to cheating, to get her pushed up in the ranks and everyone else pushed aside. But Marnie doesn't want that. She wants a legitimate fair fight and to legitimately prove herself as the next big gym challenger. Bede, on the other hand, is a prissy, snot-nosed brat who thinks he's better than everyone else and is on some secret mission for Chairman Rose. What Team Yell is to Marnie, Bede is to the chairman. He's overzealous and doing anything to prove himself in the eyes of the chairman, but when he goes a bridge too far and puts the chairman's name at risk, the chairman just cuts him off and cuts all ties. I really think these two characters should have been the primary rivals in this whole story. I don't even know why Hop is here. The issue with Pokemon Shield is that sometimes the character's backstory can be kind of pushed to the side for all the other bullshit. Bede gets a pretty interesting arc, and Marnie sort of does, but by the time you beat her brother, her story's pretty much over. Meanwhile, Hop gets this whole big thing about how he becomes the next big chosen one because he tried really hard, and I don't care about any of that. Lily from Pokemon Sun and Moon is probably one of my all-time favorite characters in the entire series. Her story with her brother and Lucamine, while they did kind of nerf the entire story in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, it's a story about a family torn apart by these grand aspirations to create a perfect new world. Lily is this feeble and weak child just kind of trying to find her place in the world. And through your actions and redemption with her brother and her mother, she finally finds the courage to go out into the world and try something new for herself. I see that Pokemon has the capacity to make these really interesting characters, and the backstory is there, but the focus is not on them when I feel like it really should be. I'm just imagining this game where you come from the inner city and you have to go out into the wider world of Pokemon and fight these giant, amazing Pokemon to prove your worth as this gym challenger who came from nothing. And Marnie's alongside you every step of the way trying to prove herself as well. Meanwhile, Bede is always one step ahead of you, where the chairman's built him up, giving him all the money and prestige he's ever needed to beat everyone in this path. And maybe Pokemon could do an interesting thing where you're not supposed to win every battle. Maybe you could fight Marnie and beat her, but you go up against Bede and you don't win. Maybe sometimes you could have a rival battle and, just lose. But over time, you feel yourself getting stronger and finally you can overcome these greater challenges. In my version of Pokemon, I would have you start off in the inner city and always being able to look into another neighborhood where the big stadium is, but never being able to quite get there. Maybe after doing a few street Pokemon battles, you can finally get enough money to get a ticket to go to one of the games and watch it for yourself, alongside your rival, Marnie. And maybe Bede's being paraded around there in one of those executive boxes where he gets to watch the game in full luxury. Maybe you run into him on your way to the bathroom or after the match is over and he gets mad and tries to battle you, and you end up either beating him or getting real damn close, so much so that the chairman takes notice. The other gym leaders have really cool designs as well. I really do like Marnie's older brother as well, sort of this old rock star type character. But again, it just feels like it falls so short. You only get a small glimpse of each character when they show up in the game. Marnie and her brother have probably the most impact on your story, but as far as the other gym leaders, they're just kind of there because they needed to be there. And it's clear that they have a backstory, because you can tell from their collectible cards that there's some level of detail there. A decent amount of thought went into who these guys are and what their backstories are, but you don't get to see any of that. Like when Melanie starts mentioning her son, and you actually get to see what her son looks like. But after you beat her, that's pretty much the last time you get to see her. All these gym leaders are just one-shots who you fight and then move on to the next thing. And I feel like at this point, Pokemon needs to have evolved past that. By the way, while we're talking about characters, here's a little nitpick. So I really like the design of this grass-type trainer, and he has these kind of ball rack things on his hips. And I'm like, oh, cool. But then when you battle him, he throws another ball. It's like, why do you even have those if you're not even going to throw... And he has 6 Pokemon on the ball racks, but he only uses 2 to battle you. This is something that I never quite understood, and I know the reasoning for it is that this is a video game that needs to slowly build up difficulty as you go along, but it never feels quite right that you go into a gym leader challenge and they're using 2 of their weakest Pokemon against you. Like, I almost wish they would do a thing where you actually have to battle all 6 of the gym leader's Pokemon when you get there. I mean, in every single Pokemon game, by the time you get to the first gym leader, you should have 6 Pokemon to battle with. So it only seems fair that you're battling against the gym leader's other 6 Pokemon, especially in a sports arena type thing like this. Like, how is it fair that you're using 6 against the gym leader's 2? Everyone in the audience should be like, what the fuck? It's weird because they changed the way the Pokemon League works to be like more of a tournament, but they didn't change any of the rules of the battling. It would have been really cool if you had to choose your best 2 Pokemon or your best 4 Pokemon or something to battle against the gym leaders. But anyway, you beat Milo, and that's pretty much the last you see of him. And the same goes for pretty much every gym leader except for Marnie's brother. I mean, I guess Raihan shows up a little bit more through the story, and the fairy-type gym leader actually helps Bede on his character arc, so that's pretty cool. And that's pretty much it for characters. I mean, there's a chairman's assistant who really doesn't do much. She's just kind of there to be a big evil baddie out of nowhere. She really has no arc and doesn't really learn anything, and neither does the chairman, to be honest. Turns out the energy that Pokemon use for Dynamaxing is also the energy that's used to power this entire city. Chairman Rose realizes that in like 100 or 1,000 years, the power is eventually going to run out. So out of complete fucking nowhere, he decides that he's going to summon this giant demonic presence from hell itself, and that's somehow going to solve the energy problem. It really just felt like, oh yeah, we need a story. I guess Chairman Rose is evil. I don't know. Totally lackluster villain, especially considering that Lusamine was so amazing in Pokemon Sun and Moon. The big Sword and Shield Pokemon have to help you defeat the big baddie thing, and you have this 4-on-1 raid battle. These are the kind of Pokemon boss battles that I wish were spread throughout the game rather than just this one time. And honestly, the Sword and Shield Pokemon are just so underwhelming and so unimportant. It's like all this big prophecy thing about the heroes who saved the world and stuff, and then the heroes turn out to be the Sword and Shield Pokemon. I don't know if you would call that build-up. I don't call it build-up. It just feels like big baddie out of nowhere, heroes come and save the day, and then they just leave. You got to fight Leon, Marnie, Hop, and Bede in a tournament-style competition. The first time you go through this tournament, it's all set, obviously. There's no randomness to it, but I do believe as you continue to challenge the Pokemon League, it is randomized. The game even does this cool thing after you beat it the first time, where you can invite a trainer from the game, a character from the game, to participate in the tournament. So, of course, I invited Marnie. I wanted to finally have my big epic battle with her in the finals, but she lost in the first round. So anyway, when you do it for the first time, you get to fight Bede, who's had this big redemption after being disgraced by the chairman. The fairy type gym leader basically takes him in as her apprentice so he can learn the ways of the fairy type. And he learns to become a softer, more empathetic human being, and he just wants to prove himself to you, of all people. So even when you beat him, it does feel like a heartwarming moment where he's like, yeah, you know, I'm a better person now. Marnie's is a little heartbreaking because she never quite gets what she wants, which is to prove herself, but she, of course, doesn't give up. And I mean, it's the same character beats as Hope, but Marnie's is a lot more meaningful. And after that, you fight Leon, and it's pretty underwhelming. And that's the end of the main story. But wait, there's more. I suppose this is a good time to talk about the online and the expansion pass before I get into endgame content. This is the first Pokemon game where the online services are implicitly paywalled off. And that's like a pretty big deal. The power of science is amazing. Now you can battle and trade Pokemon with other people just by walking around. But if you want to do it online, you need the Nintendo Switch Online Pass, which costs a couple dollars a month. Blimey, can't even do Wonder Trade without it. You're already trying to sell us on this business model where we basically have to buy 2 of the same game in order to get all of the experience. But even if you set that aside, you know, I would argue that most people are just going to buy one version. Whatever. And so that adds incentive for us to trade with our friends, yada yada yada, etc. But then in order to trade, we need access to a paywalled online service? That's pretty insidious. Thankfully, I had friends who sort of helped me foot the bill on that, because otherwise I wouldn't have even experienced the online service. You can't do Wonder Trade, you can't do the online mystery gifts, and get this, you can't even do the raid events that are going on in the wild area. In the wild area, there are special raid events where certain Pokemon show up more than other Pokemon, and you can't do those events if you don't have Nintendo online services. So I was roaming around the wild area for hours wondering why I wasn't running into this big Gigantamax event. Turns out I just didn't have Nintendo online services, and then after I activated it, that's when they started popping up fucking everywhere. You can't even participate in these free events unless you have a paywalled service. That's so fucking stupid. And I feel like it goes against the heart of what Pokemon is supposed to be. Like with the global trade services and everything, I felt like it was supposed to be a thing where you are connected to people. Death Stranding made me feel way more connected to people than Pokemon Shield ever did. No, now it's like, no, instead of connecting you with the entire world, if you pay, then you're connected with the entire world. So now we're paying for the base games, the expansion pass, Nintendo Switch Online, and Pokemon Home, plus Pokemon Bank if you've already paid for that, like I have. Can't wait to refinance my fucking home just to enjoy everything that Pokemon has to offer. I would have been perfectly fine with this whole idea of a centralized place for Pokemon if it was like this place where you can constantly battle, you can constantly check on your Pokemon, you can just make sure they're all safe and sound in one centralized place. And then they could use this as a place where, yeah, you can keep battling, you can keep trading, but also they can make the new game and not have to feel like every single Pokemon has to be brought in. Maybe they could focus on just 70, 80 Pokemon, make a game specifically around them, and you can still battle and trade within Pokemon Home. But instead, we get this weird, like, pseudo mobile app thing where you just get to store your Pokemon and trade and do other stuff that you could already do in other games. It's sort of like Nintendo Switch Online, how you could already play online before, and then they just took away that ability in order to charge you for it. There is nothing good about Pokemon Home. There's absolutely nothing good about it. And somehow, weirdly, the mobile version has better features than the Switch version. I don't know if you know this, Nintendo, but your game is on the Switch. And still no confirmation that any of our old favorites are going to be coming back to this new game. All of my battle teams are completely fucked. unless they start introducing some of these old Pokemon. And I don't feel comfortable transporting my old Pokemon to this new game if I don't know that my teams are going to be complete. Why would I shoot myself in the foot like that when they're already safe in the Pokemon Bank on my 3DS, which I am already paying for? And then it's like the online actually makes the game fucking worse somehow. When you go into the wild area, there's this cool thing where other people's trainers will start loading up and you can see their trainers roaming through the world. Here's the thing, right? The pop-in is so bad that you won't see anyone else's trainer unless you're like physically within 10 feet of them. And then every time the game loads in a new trainer, it grinds to a halt to load it in. The game will literally freeze for like half a second or a second at a time to load in every single new trainer as you pass by them. And then you don't even get to see their clothing half of the time because they're gonna be on their fucking bicycle. You go up and talk to them and you just get some like canned response saying, "Oh, I got hit in the head by this object. I wonder what it is." And it's some stupid fucking object that nobody cares about, mostly curry ingredients. So I'm like, fair enough. I have online now. I'm going to go up to one of these Gigantamax Snorlaxes and see if I can find trainers to battle with. So I sit there and I go to a Max Raid den and I wait. And I wait. And I wait. How am I finding so much trouble finding a person for a max raid battle? I tried maybe 4 or 5 times waiting for the full 3 minutes. I couldn't match with a single person. And then I just gave up on online at that point. It was fucking obnoxious. So then that brings into mind the expansion pass and how they're adding a bunch of new Pokemon and whatnot and whatnot. And now the more I think about the expansion pass, the less angry I get about it. The value proposition there is not awful. I mean, as people have pointed out, we're getting 2 expansion packs for $30, which is instead of getting the same rehashed game sold to us again. All things considered, $30 for 2 expansion packs that are just adding stuff and not forcing you to play through the same content over or pay for the same content over. That's, I feel like that's better. And, it does seem like they're adding a good chunk of content. Like, we're going to have to wait and see if the content is really as much as it seems. But that said, I am hoping for these expansion packs to make the game what I want it to be rather than what it was. That's already a pretty bad point to be at. Like, I would be excited for new content if I enjoyed the content I already got, which I did not. I hate the word content, by the way, but that's a tangent. That's a story for another time. I'm not expecting this to be blood and wine to The Witcher 3, where it's an already amazing game and then a phenomenal expansion to go with it. But if Pokemon Shield were a better game, I wouldn't be second guessing this in the first place. So then that brings me to Endgame content. So you and Hop go over to return this ancient sword and this ancient shield that you used to summon the sword and shield Pokemon. And then these 2 fucking posh British assholes come out of goddamn nowhere. It is the most glorious and hilarious thing of all fucking time, and I love it so much. Well, you wouldn't be the Professor Sonia who wrote the book Galar, A History. That awful book was filled with lies, so we gave it 1 star. I'm Swordwood. And I'm Shielbert. We're descendants of the first kings. More than that, we're celebrities. So they just come out of fucking nowhere and take the sword and shield and bully you out of the way. Why was this not the main story? These guys are amazing. And of course you beat them because you're, the new champion and shit. But then they go running off all across the world and make you chase them. Now this part's pretty fucking boring, but it is kind of nice to see some of the old characters again, including Marnie's older brother, though Marnie is kind of conspicuously missing for some reason. Basically, these Dynamax Pokemon are showing up in arenas everywhere and terrorizing the place. Despite the fact that you are just flying from one place to another, fighting these Dynamax Pokemon and then moving to the next place, they finally used the Dynamaxing in the story in a way you can experience. Yeah, it's a bit dull. It's just one Pokemon at a time, and you don't see anything truly unique or amazing with it. And also, none of the Pokemon that actually Dynamax are particularly interesting or special to their environment. But even so, I did want them to use Dynamaxing in the story some more, and they finally fucking do it in the way that you can experience. So these fucking posh British assholes end up storming Sonia's lab And hold on, I gotta set this up first, right? Out of fucking nowhere, after you beat the game, Sonia's like, "Hey guys, I got this new lab assistant. Isn't she amazing?" And the lab assistant is like, "Hi, I'm the new lab assistant. Definitely nothing suspicious about me." So then these posh British assholes are all like, "Yes, well, you've finally beaten us. I guess we've lost this time." Then the fucking lab assistant comes out of nowhere like, "Ha ha ha, I was a spy all along. Here you go, posh British assholes." These fucking guys, man. I swear I wish these guys were the main villains of the game. I can't tell you how much of an impression these guys made on me, and this is all in the last 2 hours of the game, after you've already beaten the Pokemon League. So anyway, the whole idea is that they're trying to torment the Sword and Shield Pokemon into Gigantamaxing and hurting innocent people to prove that they're not the saviors that everyone thinks they are. I guess based on the version you have, the legendary Pokemon on your box helps to calm down the other legendary Pokemon, and then the posh British assholes have learned the errors of their ways, never to do evil again, and the other legendary Pokemon joins Hop's team, because he earned it, I guess. And that's Pokemon Shield. I guess the last thing to talk about is really some Pokemon that I really liked. I guess I liked everything that was in my party here. But all in all, I had this experience where, because so many Pokemon were cut, I felt like a lot of the new Pokemon were just replacements of old ones. As Pokemon slowly transitions to becoming a live service, what with Pokemon Home and needing the Nintendo Online Pass, and now expansion passes, I just hope it's all going to be worth it. I'm not 100% against the idea. As I said, I'm not as angry about the expansion pass stuff as I was. I am still really angry that you need Nintendo Switch Online to do trading and such. But I just hope that they can stick the landing, and Pokemon Sword and Shield really showed that they might have a little bit of trouble on the descent. Thank you guys for watching. I know this video took a long time to come out. I know I haven't made a video in a really long time. I was just, taking a really long mental health break, and I was trying to focus on a lot of other stuff and just really wasn't feeling YouTube. But I've been in a very strange emotional place. But I do have a lot of video ideas in mind. Some stuff I want to do. Nothing is recorded or concrete yet, but I do have some stuff I do want to do. Death Stranding analysis is definitely going to come because I fucking loved that game. Followed by some other stuff. I've been getting into the mood of just kind of playing games for myself rather than thinking about making videos on them. It's hard to get that raw, fresh take on them, which makes for good live commentary when you play it through a second time, but it also does make analyses easier when you've already been through it once. Anyway, I'm rambling. I've got some more ideas for children's movies I want to watch as well, but that'll come in the future. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video. If you're new to my stuff, please subscribe for more. And thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate everyone who watches these things. It helps keep me motivated to keep making stuff. And I know this is super late, but I hope you had a wonderful new year. Spent it with someone or some ones that you love. And I hope that there's plenty of good times and happy memories to come.